Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM only live streams, crafting Icewind Dale, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Rime of the Frostmaiden. We're playing characters of Valravn, Frey, Celeste, Edmund, or Thimbleweed. This is the not right stream for you. This is Thursday, not Friday. I'll see you all tomorrow. But for the rest of you, welcome. Warning, there will be lots of spoilers. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. Watch all of our D&D live series as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube channel, and read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at roguewatson and join our official Discord server with invite link in the descriptions below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. For our campaign, use roll20.net. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. This is the new start time for crafting Icewind Dale, and this time I will not be late. Why I moved it. It's just fits better in my schedule. We'll still be going for the hour, but going forward it will be 11:30 Central Time, 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern for U.S. time zones going forward, because that's just what's going to work for me, and that way I don't have to come on here and apologize for being late every single time. So that will be our new start time. So good morning or afternoon to Nathan, Stan, Refas, and Jay. Hello. Getting some new names here. It's always exciting. So I'm in an interesting situation with this week's D&D session. First of all, we get to prep a new area because we have finished Caer Denival. We finished the Black Swords questline, which means it's always a stressful time whenever I get to prepare the journey as part of the next quest. And this is, if you look, quite a big journey. They mentioned last week that they wanted to go to Goodmead. They basically had two real choices, which was to go to Goodmead or Easthaven. Goodmead to do the Mead Must Flow, which is a quest they've had since like session 2, or Easthaven because that's the follow-up for the Dwerger threat, when they found the note at the Dwerger outpost saying that the Nilder, I believe's brother, is based out of Easthaven in the ferry. But they decided to go to Goodmead. So I was busy prepping Goodmead, and I was going to have maybe just a simple... the only encounter I was really thinking about doing was to have some of the Black Swords members returning to the castle at some point. Like, they just pass them on the road, and it's up to the players whether they want to interact with them or not, or tell them what happened or anything like that. It would not be a hostile encounter. And maybe do another kind of, not quite the whole talking animal thing, but just kind of remind them the fact that they're being spied on and all that. So I wasn't really interested in doing a lot of combat encounters. I just wanted to get them to the next destination, especially because we're on the road. And I figure road should be relatively safe. And, you know, there's plenty of content in this opening chapter anyway. We can worry about more random encounters when we're off really in the distant Icewind Dale doing the second act, really, after the whole Sunderlight event. So I was prepping a lot of Goodmead, and I wanted to talk about a lot of that because I've got some really cool plans for that. For example, I have expanded the Mead Hall into an actual dungeon crawl, which is interesting because had they gone to Goodmead early, you know, if they had chosen to go there instead of going to Tourmaline to do a beautiful mine, I would have just run it as is, which was the Verbeeg's lair, which is a really challenging area for level 2 players. They really have to play it smart. There's a lot of powerful creatures there, like bears and ogres and shit. But otherwise, I would have basically just run it as is and had, you know, Goodmead. Essentially, you just get the quest, and then you go to the cave and do a very small but kind of fun little dungeon crawl, which is this one. However, I got to thinking, and yeah, there's tons of goats. That'll be fun for Thimbleweed. I got to thinking, what if we made the Goodmead section a little more interesting? So instead of just getting the quest from the town, the fact that they know the speaker's been killed, there was some giant that did it, and we just have to go follow the tracks and deal with it, which is pretty simple, run-of-the-mill, just general side quest stuff. How could we make this more interesting? Well, what if the Verbeeg was a former employee at the Mead Hall? And he wasn't always a Verbeeg. What if he was just a dude who worked at the Mead Hall and was a bit of maybe an alchemist and wanted to experiment with the formula because specifically he wanted to make himself larger. He wanted to be a beefcake, right? He wanted to create like the ultimate, protein shake or something. And he just decided, because he worked at this facility, this would be the best avenue to be able to get, different ingredients and things to use. And I don't quite have filled in the details yet, as you do as a DM, but I thought obviously something went horribly wrong, and ended up mutating a lot of stuff in the Mead Hall, and including turning him into a kind of a pseudo giant, which is what the Verbeegs are. They're kind of not quite hill giants, but somewhere around ogre-ness, I guess. And I also thought it'd be funny if like he experimented on his friend first before he perfected the formula, and his friend turned into an ogre type creature. And when he did it on himself, he didn't quite go full ogre, but he ended up losing a lot of his mental capacity as he got stronger and bigger. And maybe he's in it with his it's a Bonnie and Clyde situation with like him and his girlfriend, which is the other Verbeeg that shows up at the end. So I had this whole ridiculous way of basically tying in the Verbeeg to the Mead Hall, and then also turning the Mead Hall, which I can show you this, into its own freaking crazy dungeon crawl quest, which I very much took from inspiration like the Fallout RPGs, where you enter the vault and you find the thing that's gone wrong, and it's just a dungeon crawl where you pick up like audio logs or journal entries and you try to figure out, and there's either monsters everywhere or everybody's missing or something something went wrong. It's a very classic dungeon device where but in this case it's not a cave, it's not kind of a hostile lair, it's just this is a building in a town, but something went horribly wrong, and now it's up to the players to go in and try to figure out what that is, which will then lead them to the Verbeeg's lair. That was my whole idea here. And at the moment when they arrive, there's going to be a crowd out front because people are trying to figure out what went wrong, and that's when I'm going to use Olivessa. I'm going to turn her into a high-ranking manager of this facility, which is why hopefully the players will want to nominate her as the next speaker, because the town has lost their speaker and they're not sure what's going on in here, other than the fact that it's really dangerous. Maybe the speaker actually went inside the Mead Hall to kind of investigate and never returned, and now they're like really scared about what's going on in there, and they've sent some people in there, and those people haven't come back. So, and now there's a crowd gathered out front that wants to like storm inside and try to figure out what's going on, and she's trying to like say no, that's not, please don't go inside, this is still dangerous. And then that's when the marshals show up, the players, and then she can talk to them. There can be a like survivor that they can talk to and investigate to try to figure out what's going on in there, and then they can come in here. And I've got a bunch of different maps I'm using, which I can talk about those. However, the problem is I'm telling you all this, and I don't think any of this is going to happen next session, because I was informed yesterday that 2 of my players are not going to be attending D&D this week. They're actually going to be out of town on the weekend, because I forgot in the US it is Labor Day weekend, which is typically a pretty big holiday. Granted, we're still under pandemic, but hey, who am I to judge? So I am in a unique situation where I wasn't necessarily given enough time to completely change plans, i.e. Like run a completely different adventure, or give the reins to somebody else to run a one-shot or something like that. But I was given enough time to adjust my plans for our regularly scheduled programming. So, and I'm at a uniquely interesting situation also, because we're not in the middle of a dungeon where I was like, well, I guess we just have to continue on what we're doing. Instead, we're going to this next destination. So instead, what I can do is concoct a random encounter on the way to this place, designed to kind of stall the party members that I do have, but still have them, have a fulfilling adventure. And then maybe by the end of that session, if then we actually make it to the front and start of this dungeon. So we're actually probably going to talk about all of these plans that I've got for the Mead Hall, which I thought we were going to be discussing today on crafting. We'll probably actually be discussing a lot of this for the next week and beyond. And instead, we're going to be talking about the random event that I've got planned. So we do have a pretty good distance that we're traveling here, which again, I didn't want to do a whole bunch of random encounters because it's the road, and I figured the road's relatively safe, even though the Rime makes things a lot more dangerous, but, it's still going to be safer than just roaming literally out in Icewind Out, which isn't to say that I haven't been, attacking the players before on the road, but it's been, I think, actually we've only had one road encounter, which was that one with the wolves. Otherwise, we had one encounter from here to Kevin's Cairn, which was the dwarves, the Charlatan Berserker, and then I think we didn't have any actually going back to Caerconic. So I haven't used a whole lot of random road encounters, but if you look on here, this is a pretty good distance. So on the road in my game, you can go 3 miles an hour. And yes, it's funny, there's a lot of videos out right now on YouTube about different streamers doing the, wait, can you actually go like this long a distance? And, yeah, it's, in my opinion, it's a fun thing to experiment with, but realism is not why I play D&D at all. So you can go 3 miles an hour in my game on the road, which means an hour here, an hour here. It's a little over, I'd say about 2.5 hours to reach the crossroads. And then it's probably another hour from the crossroads to reach Mead. So that still gives you plenty of time with which to encounter something. So what I'm going to have to do is, instead of them meeting the Black Swords members that are returning to Caer Dineval and there can be a social encounter, instead they're going to come across a sled that's basically been destroyed, and there's like blood splatter everywhere. There's no bodies, and you can tell that if they roll some checks, they can see maybe what attacked them. In fact, the bodies were dragged away. If they want to try to follow the bodies, they can, but I was hoping more in the case of letting them go, like letting them just use that as like a foreshadowing, basically, and then they can continue on for another half hour or something, and probably trigger it somewhere around north of the big crossroads here between Bryn Shander, Caer Dineval, Easthaven, and Goodmead, and have a blizzard descend upon the player. So I used a blizzard. I want to use blizzards, but I want to use them sparingly. We used a blizzard once early in the campaign to set the tone. It was south of Bryn Shander, and I want to use another one now where it is closing in on them. And I really want to make it so nobody's even quite sure if like Auril the Frostmaiden is actually even behind all of this. But I want to tease the supernatural element of obviously the rime and everything going on. So the blizzard's going to come, and it's going to be this really horror moment. It's not going to be like this, oh, there's a blizzard, you need to find shelter. It's going to be like, no, this fucking thing is scary. You're shivering. You start losing sight of each other. Basically what I'm doing is I'm in a cutscene, I am combining Blizzard with the Cold Light Walker, because the Cold Light Walker is a really cool, unique enemy in Rime of the Frostmaiden. I can show it to you, in fact, so I can have a visual guide with that. Let's see, it's going to be, the mention of it is actually here. I think will give me a link when I get there. Okay, Cold Light Walker. Which is a undead remnant of a reged nomad or shambling corpse of an unfortunate 10-towner cast naked into the tundra as a sacrifice to Auril and perished from exposure. It's just a cool, unique undead creature that roams around during winter and is inspired by, if you look at the, I believe it's the poster, and I guess now it'd be like the movie cover of The Thing, where it's got like a humanoid wrapped in like furs and then just light coming out of their face, and that's really what this is very obviously inspired by. And it's mechanically wise, it's pretty great because it just has a huge range attack with this cold ray. Only a +3, but it deals an average of 25 cold damage, and it can do it twice, which is pretty crazy. So literally, you've just got this fucking laser beam walking around that can do some serious damage. Now, it's a CR5. I'm only going to have 3 active players. I'm thinking about, again, turning this into a cutscene as a way of foreshadowing what will later be Cold Light Walker encounter, and not having that be the actual encounter. So by cutscene, I mean I'm going to be narratively describing what's going on. So in this case, it'll be, again, the blizzard is coming down on you. It's really scary. You're trying to find shelter. You can't even see each other. The wind's whipping past. Hopefully I can find an audio supplement to go with that, but Roll20 doesn't have the best means to do that with anymore. They used to be a lot better with a lot of different sound effects, and it got worse a couple of years ago. Yes, Refus, I'm absolutely doing that. You're starting to catch on. So again, I have a situation because I was given enough time to prepare a little bit for that. That's exactly my plan, is I'm going to separate the PCs and get rid of the missing players, which is again, very tricky thing to do. My players do not like that, but at some point they have to be able to trust me, like, okay, I'm going to balance things so that this makes sense for, I'm not going to throw regular shit at you, which you all have to help me with this. We're fixing to talk about what I've got planned for them. And we do have to remember, with the caveat that I'm only going to have 3 PCs, it's the Herrings, Thimbleweed and Celeste, which are not going to be there, which can be a big part of their DPS, Thimbleweed especially. So we'll have to make that part of the consideration. So in the cutscene, they're going to see this figure in the distance with this light, and the light is going to be terrifying. Like, they just know in their soul and their bones that, like, this light is unnatural and horrifying, and they're going to hear this whispering of, like, behold the final light and all that. So I'm playing up this entire cold light encounter with the blizzard, with the caveat that it's not meant to be an actual encounter. Instead, I'm going to kind of I'm going to railroad things a little bit, if we're being honest. I'm going to railroad it as a cutscene. But again, some groups would hate this. I think my groups would appreciate this, where I describe this encounter, and they just turn and just run and just, very try to find their way through this. And plus, you don't want to, again, I'm going to describe this blizzard as being very awful, and like, you can't stay out here, and like, this thing, they don't know what it is. It's just this beacon of light they see. But they just know they need to get away from it. And that will lead them to a cave, which is going to be full of gnolls. So I'm basically taking the Cackling Chasm and turning it into a little bit more of a traditional just cave dungeon crawl, because I don't like the way the chasm is designed, both as an actual battle map and as a setup, because it has this weird situation where the players can walk into this dungeon, all the gnolls just kind of nod at the players and don't attack them, because the gnolls hate their boss, and then the players can just go and defeat the boss and then just walk out. Like, it's a very unsatisfying, weird setup. And then the dungeon itself, it's okay. Obviously, my players would love dealing with a chasm for the most part, but it's also weird to wrap my head around in terms of how to navigate it. I don't know. I'm not actually a big fan of this scenario. I may use this map further on as a like getting from point A to point B, but in terms of, I just need a cave right now, and it doesn't make any sense to have this chasm anywhere close to the road also. So, but I do like the concept of gnolls, desperate gnolls in Icewind Dale, trying to, carve out whatever meager existence they can. In this case, it's going to be moving close to this road and like preying on people that are going back and forth. So we've got a dungeon planned for that, and my whole goal is, again, to provide the players with essentially a encounter that turns into a bit of a dungeon crawl, and it's just a traditional kind of hack and slash dungeon crawl, because I don't have my full team. So I'm just kind of throwing something out there for them to tackle. But I think these players especially, and all my players really enjoy dungeon crawling, right? That's a big part of why we play D&D. So I'm kind of using the inspiration of a gnoll cave to just provide a few gnolls, with the caveat that, again, I've only got 3 players. So this is what I've got so far. This map, by the way, because I know there'll be questions about it, is from Gabriel Picard's Quick Encounters Snow and Ice, which is purchasable on Roll20. I'm a big fan of Gabriel's maps. I've used them before in Tomb of Annihilation with jungles and jungle ruins. And this one is, the great thing about these map packs, and again, I'm not being sponsored by them or anything, I'm just telling you, is that they've got pieces, like assets you can throw on there, as well as full-on maps that you can use. And I previously used these maps whenever we went to Kelvin's Cairn as well. You can see multiple maps that I used. Sorry, I've got my overlay kind of, I know, kind of blocks the maps. But I did use quite a bit of these maps when we tackled Kelvin's Cairn as well. So huge shout out to Gabriel Picard on Roll20. It's just always worth the cost for me. So this is the Gnoll Cave, and I thought it'd be a really fun way to have the fact that the missing players that were split are going to be in a prison at the end. They've been captured by the Gnolls, and we can slot them in here, literally in these cages. So it'll be a fun thing where, yes, we take away the players. Oops, I didn't quite center that one, did I? Well. Alt and move. So there'll be a chance for them to rescue their fellow party members at the end for at least the final fight, and then in that case I can let them, that adds another interesting dynamic. Like, they can spend some actions trying to free them, or not. I don't know in terms of where they would be. Maybe they'll keep their weapons like up here or something, so that would be a difficult situation. That would make the monk a lot more powerful, actually, interestingly enough. The monk is intrinsically more useful in a prisoner situation because the monk doesn't rely on weapons for the most part. I've put little numbers here to kind of remind myself when I'm actually building the notes for my dungeon, because that's always a thing that I rely on for Roll20. They always have like A1, A2, and A3, so I've got that here. So you guys can help me with this, because this is really kind of a for scratch dungeon that I've thrown together, just taking an inspiration, the fact that it's just full of gnolls. I was trying to look at different kinds of gnoll stat blocks, and I was looking at maybe what other creatures would be in a gnoll cave, so I don't have to literally just use gnolls, but I could just use gnolls. Like, I don't know what other... You could use hyenas, I guess, would be the obvious thing, but that always felt weird to me. It'd be like... humans running around with monkeys, I guess, which I suppose that does happen occasionally, but I don't know. That felt it felt goofy. And I feel like if they had any animals, they would have eaten them also. So I want to kind of stress the fact that these are very desperate, savage gnolls. I think gnolls are all obviously supposed to be like super evil and nasty to begin with. So in number 1, they're going to find, again, traces of blood. Make sure the notes are not on the token layer. Thank you. Yes, these are on the GM layer. That's a good note. I have screwed that up before. That was funny. I was at the Dorger Outpost, wasn't it? I rarely make that mistake, but mistakes do happen. But yes, these are on the GM layer. Thank you for reminding me. And I put the other problem I have is I tend to leave things on the. In fact, I need to make these. I tend to leave things on the token layer that should be on the map layer, which I notice when I roll my fancy group initiative includes those tokens, which was pretty funny whenever I have like doors that have initiative now suddenly. So the first thing they'll see is some blood. I love using the little blood art pieces that are on Roll20 to kind of foreshadow where some nasty stuff is. This is, by the way, what they're going to see from their point of view with the dynamic lighting on. Make sure that works out pretty well. They'll be able to see light coming from this. Oh, I need to scroll down so you guys can see it. Light coming down from this tunnel because that is going to be a campfire. Gnolls have dark vision, but they would need to stay warm because it's fucking cold as shit, and that's a problem. So they would be using it more for heat rather than warmth. I don't know if they necessarily cook their food or not. Maybe they do sometimes, maybe not, but they would have a fire down there, so they'd be able to see the light. And they would see the blood here. So obviously that's a cool fork in the road, right? You can either go towards the light you can see, or you can go towards the blood. And then the blood will lead them to 2 rooms. This one is just a room full of kind of supplies that the gnolls have probably scavenged that might, it's kind of a mini treasure cache that the players could find. I've not determined what's in there. I will be looking at the Dungeon Master's Guide and trying to figure out what's the appropriate amount of treasure to give them. And then kind of a like an abattoir or something, like basically a place where they dump their dead bodies that are still rotting. I think they would pick them clean to the bones, though, so maybe I need to actually use a bone pile versus a body pile now that I think about it. Combo of regular gnolls and gnoll witherlings. So I looked up the witherlings, and yeah, they are literally undead gnolls. They've got a pretty cool picture to go with them also. And it's an interesting... The description does state that the gnolls just hang out with these witherlings, which I thought was very interesting, because usually, undead don't play nice with other creatures. So you could use those as something different. They're really shitty gnolls, basically, is what they are. But especially if you had bones, I guess you could knit them together. I just downloaded the witherling picture. That looks like if we want to use that. What I did use, I've got regular gnolls. I've got the gnoll flesh gnar, I think it's called, which I believe was from Valos, which is, so a regular gnoll is a CR half, which is just a pretty good like shock trooper, right? It's pretty middle of the road. It's got decent AC actually. They use shields. Hit points 22. It only has 1 attack, but has a lot of options. It's got longbows, it's got spears, it can wield in 2-handed, and then all the gnolls have this rampage ability, which honestly doesn't come into play very often because it's only when they reduce a creature to 0 hit points, which, I guess if they're downing somebody, okay, they can take a bonus action to move up and bite somebody else, but I guess that can cascade pretty bad, but I wouldn't think it's going to come up very often. So that's the regular gnoll. The gnoll flesh gnar loses 1 point of armor class, but it gains multi-attack, where it can make 3 attacks, which suddenly makes it 3 times as powerful as a regular gnoll. It's got the same hit points, but that's crazy. So you have to use those very sparingly, I feel like. And then for its as an extra ability where actually it does say that's an action, doesn't it? Until the end of the turn, the gnoll speed increases by 60 feet and doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. I think that's listed as an action. As an action, it has to take sudden rush. Basically, it combos dash and disengage. So I don't know again why that would be too terribly useful here, but still very sparingly. That suddenly this one gnoll is just like more. I don't know if you would maybe it. What I'd like to do, ideally, is combine this with the Chardalyn a little bit, and maybe like some of the gnolls are being empowered because maybe they're eating Chardalyn berserkers or something, or they found, or because and again, I just foreshadowed the those we'll just call them cultists, the Black Swords guys getting basically captured and their bodies dragged out. Too. So that's kind of something I'm trying to think about how to convey that. So it's not just a completely random event, but maybe ties in a little bit. The Witherlings are really cool looking. I don't know, and I don't want to use too much combat here because again, we've only got 3 players, and I really want to finish this. The whole point of this is just to have this be for this one session, so I want to get through this whole dungeon in tomorrow's session. So I'm leery about adding too much to it. So right now, as is, again, they turn over here. Room 2 just has supplies. Room 3 just has bodies. One thing I like seeing in dungeons is a balance of combat, exploration, and role-playing, right? I don't have any role-playing at the moment other than the fact that their own party members are captured further in here. I thought about maybe putting a Shardle and Berserker somewhere, but the only place that makes sense would be back there where they've got the prisoners anyway. And the Berserker wouldn't really be a good source of role-playing. Exploration, obviously dungeons kind of automatically do exploration because that's just the party moving their tokens and moving around the board. However, I think that also fits puzzles and traps. Now, a gnoll cave would not necessarily have puzzles and traps, but you could still create hazards. So I'm thinking, how do I make a saving throw type hazard that would be in a gnoll cave? So if any of you have advice for that, I would love to hear it. The only one I can think of is if there's literally just a horrible amount of bodies and nastiness here, then I can force some kind of a con save, or maybe inflict the poisoned condition because you're literally like retching and you're so disgusted by what's going on, and then you've got like the poison condition for the next hour or something, which would give which is pretty bad. I mean, that's like disadvantage. That was the only idea I had, and that would be like if they basically make it anywhere around this area. They don't have to even go in this room because why the fuck would you go in this room? But just being in this zone would be maybe forcing that kind of con save, or you're just retching the whole time, which is kind of similar to, I try to look at spells for inspiration. I think that's similar to what Stinking Cloud does. What Stinking Cloud is 20-foot radius sphere of yellow nauseating gas. Each creature completely in the cloud at the start of the turn must make a con saving throw against poison. On a failed save, the creature spends its action. That's only you're spending your action though, so that doesn't help me. I want something that would inflict, obviously, something either long term, which is either hit points, or inflicting a status condition that's actually going to last longer than a round. Or you throw a fight at them at the same time, which, I mean, you could have, maybe Witherlings are tending to these bodies at the same time, but I don't know. That's a tricky one. Is Eric cutting out for anyone else? Oh, I hope not. I wonder if I'm skipping or something. I tried maybe my mic sensitivities. Tried raising that up. My apologies. Witherlings could be cold light walker like enemies. As starved to death, they desperately sought any aid. So in the lore that I can tell, the Witherlings were actually, which it would make sense to have Witherlings in here. They were basically the gnolls turned on each other like cannibals, and the gnoll, and for some reason they, through ever their dark rituals or something, the gnoll then comes back. The gnoll that was torn apart comes back as an undead Witherling, but then serves the living gnolls, which is pretty goddamn convenient for gnolls. Like, why would they just not always tear into their own? Giant maggots, that's gross. Yeah, you could use, what is that, like a swarm of centipedes would be like maggots, maybe? I don't know why they'd be giant, but you could use a swarm. Swarms are bad. Swarms can be very bad. I actually don't have swarm of insects in here. I've got it in here. Swarm. A swarm of animated books. Swarm of There's centipede. There you go. Swarm of maggots is one of them, actually. Van Richtens? Apparently that's swarm of maggots. Gross. That is a gross token. Infestation. Oh no. What does it do? 44 piercing damage. Creature damaged by the swarm must succeed on DC 12. Con saving throw or contract a disease. Each time the diseased creature finishes a long rest. Oh, that sounds like a pain in the ass. Each time the diseased creature finishes a long... Yeah, like, I'm gonna keep track of that. That's dumb. I'd rather just inflict the poison condition or something easy. God, no enemy should have a paragraph for its ability. Is the stat the same as a swarm of... Let's see, like, what's centipedes is more... Isn't that, like, poisoning you? Stable but poisoned for 1 hour. Oh, that's only if you're reduced to 0 hit points. Paralyzed while poisoned in this way. I don't think a carrion crawler would be... I don't think the gnolls would let a carrion crawler hang out. I mean, maybe through the caves or something it can... Carrion crawlers are actually pretty strong, too, that I recall. Aren't they, like, CR2? I do not have carrion crawler in here, weirdly enough. One of these days I need to actually purchase the monster manual in Roll20. I think everything else. Carrion crawler, CR2 has the cool tentacles. Probably just be one beast. I feel like the swarm would be more likely that would be hanging out here. And only... it would really only jack with them if they went near the bodies. We'd have a swarm of maggots. Plus, I can just drag this swarm over and use that. But I'm going to change its stat block. Oops, let's go back to swarm. Swarm! I kind of like the maggots, actually. Means the witherlings, I don't know if I want to use them or not. There's a lot of swarms out there. Swarm of zombie limbs. Oh, that's a swarm of milkshakes for a second. Grim shucks. Delicious swarm of milkshakes. Good way to go. Yeah, it is CR2. I like carrion crawlers. They're pretty cool, but I think it'd be too big of a... I mean, they're literally large. It would be way too big of a bug that... I mean, the gnolls would not allow that thing to be crawling around their freaking place. Or they would have eaten it. That's the other thing. Like, these guys are supposed to be desperate. They're hungry. Like, they would have absolutely hunted everything in here and eaten it. Alright, so we can use Swarm of Maggots, but I'm going to change its stat block because I do not like what it can do. Is it just insects I want to look at then? I could just have it do 44. Plus attack, plus 3. Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, maggots still have the same. They have 1 less armor class in this Swarm of Insects. Maggots are a little bit easier to hit, I guess. I think for my own sanity, we are going to delete all this bullshit. I could leave the poisoned. Let's see, or creature damaged by the swarm must succeed a DC 12 con saving throw or become poisoned. Maybe you could repeat the save. Repeat the save at the end of each. So it's basically just a combat thing. So we'll leave that. That is way easier. We can leave a swarm of maggots to come bursting out of those bodies in case, you know, they want to say, hey, I want to check their pockets or something. Let's see if my thingy works or I can roll hit points. It does. 29 hit points. Pretty solid. Let's put those guys in the GM layer. Yeah, spider or poisonous snakes also. Let's see what they do. Oh, they do extra. Whoa, DC 10 con saving throw, take an extra 4d6 poison damage. But that's because they're actually like, and it probably should be venomous, by the way, not poisonous. Pushes up glasses, actually. Do any of them inflict the poison condition? What about wasps? That's just straight up damage. Okay. Alright, I'm fine with that. So there'll be a swarm of maggots in there. Most only the maggots won't like surge forward and attack though. Only if they really come into this room and jack with the bodies. Will the maggots come out here? So maybe I won't do the force them into a con save situation. Unless they actually come into this room. And again, like I said, number 2 is just going to have some generic supplies and stuff they can loot. Not a whole lot of the best treasure or anything, because that's going to be further in the dungeon. As it should be. Room 4 is going to be full of gnolls. And here's where it gets tricky, where I need your help balancing. Yeah, snakes in frozen places are weird as well. That's true. And you know, we had a lifetime's worth of snakes in our previous campaign in the jungle. So I'm basically trying to, you know, a lot of this is I'm trying to use creatures that are, you know, native to the area. I think it's really fun to be able to use. It's why I used a lot of dinosaurs for Chol, because it's just more fun to be able to show off those flavors of these exotic locations. We haven't actually fought gnolls since like Prince of the Apocalypse though, so I am perfectly fine with using gnolls here. But there is a gnoll vampire in the book. There sure is. That's going to be a lot later. That's going to be at the beginning of Act 3, which is in the Caves of Hunger. I'm not sure. I do want to use something that's hunting them in the cave. I don't know if it's going to be that gnoll vampire, for being honest. Because I'm upscaling, the players will be higher level by the time they make it to that dungeon. I am going to run that dungeon, you know, use the map and everything. But in the book, the players are like level... I forget where they are when they get to the Caves of Hunger. I literally did forget. Jeez. But anyway, I'm upscaling things a lot more, so they'll be more like, I don't know, level 12 or something by the time they make it to the dungeon, which means I'll probably have to upscale that vampire. And I don't know if I'll use a gnoll vampire or not, but or maybe I'll just use 2 gnoll vampires, whatever is going to be the case. There'll be a whole coven of vampires that'll be hunting them that have awoken. That could be interesting. But yes, there is a gnoll vampire. More vampire thralls, maybe. So I need your help balancing. How many gnolls do I use in an encounter with only 3 player characters? And again, gnolls, I've got the regular gnoll and I've got the flesh gnar, and the regular gnolls aren't that bad at all. They still stick around. They got AC of 15, which is pretty decent for a minion. Honestly, pretty great. Hit points 22, average. And then they only have their 1 attack, which is only a +4 and an average of, you know, 5 or 6 damage. I guess their best thing to do is do the 2-handed melee spear attack. They do come with bows, which is interesting, longbows. So they're not that powerful. But then you've got this terrifying flesh gnar, which is 3 attacks. He does not have he loses ranged attack, but he can attack 3 times with his freaking short sword and just runs around in a frenzy, which I can describe as just a more frenzied gnoll. So I've got 3 here. Roll for hit points also. 27, 16. Oh, 16. I rolled really bad on hit points. That's interesting. I've got, I kind of, on the one hand, I miss rolling the virtual dice for the actual hit points, but I've got this really helpful macro that just, you press a button and it instantly generates the hit points for that token, and it saves me a lot of time. Pretty nice. So that's what's there. They're just going to be there, and that's going to be a fight. Room, and again, so far I've got 2 gnolls and a flesh gnar. I have no idea, you know, how much to adjust that or not, although I just rolled pretty bad on hit points, so maybe that'll help the party. I don't have anything planned for room 5. I'm struggling to come up with what else challenge could be. There doesn't have to be a challenge in every room, but there should be something in every room. I just don't know what that's going to be here. Maybe there's some kind of altar here, because gnolls do worship their demon god. So I could include some kind of ritualistic thing that the party can jack with in some way. Maybe they find, I don't know, something that I don't know. I'm drawing a blank in terms of what they would come across. Anyway, and then number 6 would be the actual final room. So it's just a pretty, nice little linear dungeon crawl here, which would be what I've got is 2 gnolls, a gnoll flesh gnar, and then a gnoll pack lord, which is a CR2. I believe this one is actually from the monster manual. It's just a gnoll boss essentially. It's got the same hit point, or sorry, it's got the same armor class. It has about double the hit points, and it does have multi-attack, including a glaive, which does more damage. And it has a really cool ability called Incite Rampage, where it can basically control other gnolls, have them use their reaction to make melee attacks, which is neat, although it does work on a recharge, so you're probably not going to get it every round. But it's a really cool feature for a boss to have, is basically the boss can just control the minions and allow them to make attacks like that, so that's pretty fun. So that's what I've got here. I may insert another gnoll or 2 as backup in case the party ends up freeing their allies and really kicking ass here. And I'm thinking about also... I need to hit the long rest button for... Celeste, I don't think she did that. There we go. Do I let the... How do I rule the missing players, party members, escaping from this cage? Because if we look at the... You know what? Let's look at Cackling Chasm, because they have the same situation, except it's a Shardolin Berserker that's in there. What's in Z8, which does not have any rules. Of course it doesn't. Really? Bolt on the door can't be reached by someone trapped in the cage. That's not how we run D&D. Come on. There's no rules behind this? I'm reading through it. There's really not. Okay. So it's just if you're outside, you can free them, but if you're inside, there's no chance to be freed. Obviously, that wasn't made for a player character to be inside, but what if there's a player character inside a cage? You could also have them be obviously damaged and unconscious. I could use the Witherlings as filler, yeah. Maybe that's something the Pack Lord can do. Maybe there's like a pile of bones, and if things get crazy, the Pack Lord can do something where he like summons, and then the Witherlings like get generated from the bones. That could be cool. Let's see, where can I do a pile of bones? Show me bones, roll 20. Show me bone pile. Bone pile, a thing I can use? Yes, that's what I want. That's what I want. Pile of bones. Alright, I need it somewhat visible. You can put it here, because I need to actually create Witherlings also. See, if we take the gnoll, G, where's G? Gnoll. Take your basic gnoll, and let's duplicate it. How to make a character sheet and roll 20. And we've got search gnoll so I can find it easier. Copy of gnoll. You go here. And we're going to start editing you. Call you a gnoll witherling. I like that idea, though, making it like a thing they summon. Witherling. Delete. Delete. Delete all that. And make the token on here. There we go. We're not going to do the default token yet. Edit this part of the sheet. Witherling. Actually undead. I think it matters in this context, but got an AC of 12. They're pretty shitty. Natural armor, hit points, average of 11. It's got bandit hit points. 3 feet, strength 14, dex is 8, con is 12, intelligence of 5, wisdom of 5, charisma of 5. Immune to poison. Dark vision still 60. Language understands gnoll but doesn't speak. CR 1/4. Weaker than the average gnoll. Not roll damage, please. Still has the rampage ability. Good old gnoll. And it's got a bite, club, and multi-attack, which none of these are that. Or sorry, it does have bite, so we can keep bite on there. And multi-attack. Has a club. Armed with a club. To top. Bite +4, still same bite damage. Bite don't change. Club is an attack. 5 feet plus hit is 4. 1 target, and it deals 1d4 plus 2 bludgeoning. So it's pretty shitty, but a good minion. Does have a reaction. It's called a Vengeful Strike. States in response to a gnoll being reduced to 0 hit points within 30 feet of the witherling makes a melee attack. That could come up a lot more useful if I can spell vengeful correctly. Vengeful Strike. And that is how we make our pretty little gnoll witherling. And then, oh, we're not done yet. We have to make that the default token. Go. Gnoll. Witherling. We want bottom overlapping. We want this to show the NPC AC. We do not want this to show the hit points because the hit points can change. And we don't want that reflected in the sheet. So instead we just use the average hit points. In case you want to know how to build a character sheet, there you go. And then the final step is to make this the default token so that you can drag it onto the map. Now, if I wanted to use more gnoll witherlings, you could do this, and there you go. That's how we get our happy little gnoll witherling. If we want to roll for hit points, we do this. I guess I should show you what the macro is for that, in case you're curious. Under roll NPC HP. Oh shoot, maybe it's part of a different one then. It's just exclamation NPC HP. It might be part of an API, I'm not actually sure. Got so many freaking APIs on here now. Zombie Undead Fortitude. God, that would be horrendous. We just have a pile of bones here at the Pack Lord's behest. And then maybe on his first action, if things go real south, he summons 2 of these witherlings. So that can foreshadow the fact that they're eating their own. Alright, so that might be, especially for 3 PCs, what I can probably do is have these guys be maybe injured or unconscious in some way. Because that's how they would be captured, obviously. And thus, if they wanted to, they could try to free them and get them back into combat strength, but that probably wouldn't be the idea. Oh, ooh, God, 32 on the flesh gnaw. Oh no. 30 on another gnoll. Let's see what the Pack Lord gets. As a boss, I want him to have average or higher. Nope. Fortunately, the way the macro works, I only get 1 roll, so 36 is not good enough. What does your character sheet say? I don't necessarily want to give you max, though. You're not a named character. GR 98 plus 9. This is probably going to be too strong. 53 for 3 players to handle. They've shocked me before. Now, gnolls, I believe, are humanoid, so all of Valrobin's little things would work. All those little bullshit crowd control spells. in that case, maybe I do need to let them, if they're clever enough, if somebody wants to spend an action, like, you know, opening the cage, rousing them into combat strength, maybe that could happen. But they would certainly be stripped of equipment. Yeah, maybe put more piles of bones everywhere. Smaller pile of bones, though. That looks dumb. A smaller pile. There we go. Use that. Small pile of bones in the corner. This looks good. And that's pretty much what I want to do for this session. We can put more of this kind of stuff. Sure, like, again, that can be the Thimbleweed and Celeste's equipment, I guess, can be over here. You know, kind of like the treasure pile room, basically. Without having a little treasure chest there, because that's a little too video gamey. Let's see what we've got for treasure piles. But I don't want actual chests and shit. Maybe crate could work. Some kind of storage. I mean, I guess a chest could fucking work. I don't know. Gnoll cave of a chest in it. A large wooden crate probably is not very likely to have in the middle of Icewind Dale. And yet. I'll put some more knapsacks around here. Just make another little treasure cache. Hidden around the corner. So, in other words, there's not really any story here, other than the fact that, you know, their party's been separated. They're just trying to find the other half of their party, and you know, there's gnolls that are becoming increasingly aggressive. I'd like to tease something to do with Shardlin, but I'm not quite sure what it is. I don't necessarily let the gnolls be wielding the Shardlin, but maybe they've ingested people that are in people that have been infected by Shardlin. Maybe that's infecting them. I don't know. Or I just ignore all that and just let it be a bunch of gnolls. And it's still something in... I think I was going to do like an altar. I think there's an altar in the Cackling Chasm as well. That's what I'm using for inspiration. Move that swarm down. Let's see. Altar, yeah, Z3. Shrine to Yeenagu. I don't know how to pronounce the Gnoll god. Crude stone altar with a mountain goat's bloody head resting atop it dominates this 8-foot-high cave. Littered with gnawed animal bones. And there's nothing else in there. It just doesn't do anything. Yeah, so the idea is they definitely ate some of the Black Sword's cultist folks. I'm just trying to figure out what effect that would necessarily have. Maybe that's what turned some of these into these flesh gnars. Maybe they're a little more like feral and muttering and mad, and that's what gives them their more their enhanced abilities. Yeah, I could allow like some kind of check for that. What are, let's see, gnolls are humanoids. Our house rule for humanoid is a history or nature check. Although for Shardlin, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it would still work. You're still trying to identify what's going on with him. Probably also use like medicine or maybe even Arcana to try to notice the fact that there's some more superpowered gnolls, in this case with the flesh gnars, and of course the head honcho gnoll himself, which the cool thing is he can sit back there and just fire off with his freaking longbow twice and then use Incite Rampage. This could actually be a really fucking difficult fight for them with the 3 people, so I may not... Well, I don't know if I use it. I literally use the same altar with the goat head. You have to play these gnolls not exactly as maximum efficiently as I could. But who knows? I'm always underestimating my players. They may just absolutely kick ass. Maybe we'll finally force Frey to actually use one of her rages. A whole lot of just altars that are more crude than official here. I want like animal bone altar. Not really seeing that roll 20. Maybe I could just use like a cairn, like a stack of bones. Although I'm already using the bone pile. Oh, that could work. It's like a bone chair. Bone cage. People like making things out of bones, don't they? Reroll 20 assets. That might work. A bunch of skulls. Do demony. So it looks too stretched. We make that better looking. There we go. Just put it in the corner with some blood around it or something, like they are making some sacrifices. Tell me more of this brown mold. Like, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. Like, I would like more hazards that aren't just combat related. Because combat eats a lot of time up, and like I said, my goal for sure is to get through this entire dungeon in the one session. And we're already looking at a pretty big, long fight here at the end, and then we've got one fight in the middle. And possibly against this freaking swarm of maggots. Who knows if that ends up being a fight or not. So I'm leery about adding any more fights, but I could definitely add some hazards and challenges for sure. But it'd have to make sense in the context of the gnolls do use this as their base. They wouldn't just have something dangerous that would be around. So I am wanting to be careful about that and have it be make a little bit of sense. I forgot to turn off my Streamlabs thing. This is the spoiler one. You can talk about spoilers. Want blood? Would they be sacrificing stuff to their altar? Or would they just be eating it? Blood pile. Here. You just put this front, and put this. Looks good. That on the map layer. That on the map layer. Boom. Yeah. Sickles could be interesting. I think there's something I can do with this altar, but I think it's just going to be an exploration thing. Be like, yeah, gnolls are demon worshipping assholes. They've set up a shrine here where they worship. And that might be enough content, I think, for one session. Or the gnolls are shooting icicles down? Oh. Agreed, Nathan. I won't go into politics right now, but it's sure as hell affecting Texas right now, my fucked up state. I think this is a pretty good balance. Like, I'll need to do one, maybe one hazard. There's one interesting thing. It doesn't have to be a hazard. It could be just something else that the players could come across. Basically, between this fight and the next one, I just want to have something kind of in this general area. But otherwise, I think this is going to be a pretty good balance for one session. Just a very traditional one-session dungeon crawl that hopefully is fun without being obvious that I'm just stalling for time, so that it's a filler episode basically of a series before we get our party together and can properly make it to good Mead in the session after. And I assume this will take up the rest of the session as well. But I have been going for an hour now, so I do believe I need to wrap this session of Crafting Annihilation up. I just said Crafting Annihilation, didn't I? I haven't done that in a long time. Crafting Icewind Dale. Wow. Good lord. All right, if you enjoy the content and streams, please check. If you enjoy Crafting Annihilation as well, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shout outs to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Wizard, Princess, Christopher, Thomas, Captain Mike, Adam, Aiden, Stan, Nathan, Alex, Chad, Alexander, Dan, Daniel, Cam, and the Quizats Hatterack. Gold patrons: RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Arash, Slumpy Spuds, Jerome, Sclenia, Nick, Party McButterpants, Blood Angel, Veronis, Baboon, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, and James. I will see you all tomorrow night for D&D.